Absolutely. Well, thank you, James, and thank you to the team. Really appreciate being with you this morning, especially with Mark and James inviting me to be on the call. Such an honor, and can't wait to hop into this. What would it look like for each of us if, just like James talked about, we just were able to take one step, one idea, one little tiny measure, and add it to our professionalism, add it to our leadership, add it to the way that we interact with clients every single day. What would that do to our overall influence in our branches? What would that do to our overall influence with our leadership organizational structure? And what would that do with our everyday clients who are relying on us? I mean, it would absolutely and exponentially increase your influence and the ability for you to succeed in your role. And I believe all that happens when we improve our client communication skills. This is something that sometimes, as I start to talk about out loud, I can sometimes hear like a collective sigh in the background because we're talking about communication skills. I remember years ago watching the great Allen Iverson play basketball, who happens to be the same age as me. He had a little bit more success in basketball than I did in the streets of Detroit. Then he kind of went his old route. But all of us probably could remember the day, even in the midst of all of his greatness, that he was being interviewed about his practice, and he went on to say, "Why are we talking about practice?" And that's a famous interview, people all over the place. But for you and I, as leaders, every day in the trenches, if we don't take notice and practice, if we don't take notice and highlight and identify maybe a couple of the little communication poor behaviors that we have that maybe we haven't noticed, we're not going to be successful. And so we want to jump in to this material and any questions along the way, please put them in the chats. I'm going to ask you questions from time to time. I'm going to ask you to engage. I understand we're kind of in meeting mode. If you need to be doing other things, I totally get it. But there's moments where we can have some type of feedback. Let's do that. I hopefully at the end of the day, you'll get done with the day and go, oh, wow, that webinar earlier gave me some practical skills. And then, wow, it was a fun webinar. We were able to learn something and move forward. And so let me share some slides here and move forward with this. Here's the reality. What separates us from good client communication from great client communication? Some of us in this room, we've been doing it a long time. But what happens when we go from the good, hey, I'm good, oh, they're good, to the absolutely astounding, to the great, to the, oh, I want to work with them. Oh, I beeline it for them every time I see them because their communication skills. Well, I'm a Tom Brady guy and love the opportunity to read and study about Tom Brady. Grew up outside of Detroit. He went to University of Michigan, not too far from where I was. And I remember reading an interview, seeing Tom Brady in an interview where somebody asked him, "What was it like your first year in the NFL?" And he goes, "It was pretty miserable. I was six on the depth chart. We're in practice. I get one snap, and I was just dialing it in. I didn't care. It was like, what am I doing here?" And he talked about how a veteran got into his face and said, "What are you doing? You can't just throw that. You can't dial this in. You have to do everything you can to show everybody, your teammates, your coaches, the people in the stands, that you absolutely care." And so from that moment on, here he goes. Tom Brady comes running out to the field, with his one snap in practice at the very end of the day, like it was the last minute of the Super Bowl. And he went from good to great. On the left side of this screen, you could see these are some of my Tom Brady paintings that a friend of mine did in my office. On the right side, you can see, yes, I'm a Gen Xer. Those of us who are Gen X, I have a great love for Hootie and the Blowfish. And so, but one day my wife was actually making fun of me about my great love for Tom Brady. And I had bought a cutout for our house. And the joke became, where's the Tom Brady cutout going to be today? And somehow she just joked, it will never be in our bedroom. And lo and behold, It is now in our bedroom, and it's on the on my side of the bed. You can still see my Tom Brady pillow in the middle. But I love this quote by Tom Brady: "To be successful at anything, the truth is you don't have to be special. You just have to be what most people aren't: consistent, determined, and willing to work for it." So, friends, on this call this morning, let's find a couple of those nuggets, a couple of those nitty gritties, a couple of those skills that you can approach the everyday minutia. I mean, every day, right? The calls, the meeting with clients, meeting with people walking in, the dealing with a teammate, the dealing with referrals, the day to day. How can you look for those little moments to absolutely improve? And so let me just ask you a question. Could a 1% improvement make all the difference in your leadership? Make all the difference in your financial professionalism, because you are a financial professional. When someone walks in, they are looking to you for your professionalism, your expertise, your wisdom, your knowledge, and your help. I mean, we are in the people business. And yes, people are not fun sometimes. I just did a live training not too long ago where we went around the table, and some folks, we started to share some of those not fun situations. And they weren't fun hearing some of those situations. They're not. But we do have amazing amount of opportunity where we get to speak into our clients' lives. So the learning objective for our time, we want to be able to equip you, give you some transformational client communication skills, whether on the phone, in person, trust building, loyalty driving moment by mastering the words, tone, techniques that create meaningful impact, long term impact. So we want to be able to say, hey, what are some of the things, the intangibles, the people first communication skills that will help you improve? Let's just jump right into what does it look like to speak at your client, speak at them. Well, you know this, talking more than listening, talking more than listening. When we do not let them get into the conversation, we begin to speak at them. When we use industry jargon that maybe they don't quite fully grasp, and sometimes we need to use industry jargon, right? Sometimes the opportunity is there. We have to. But when we start to use so much that it just pours on top of them, and then their eyes glaze back, they start paying attention to their phone, we know we've lost them. Another one, cutting off questions or redirecting too quickly. This happens frequently. I know for some of us, uh, my communication personality type, I'm a talker. And so I have to work very hard with being patient and sitting there. How else do we speak at our clients? We rush through the information without checking for understanding. We just keep going, expecting them to understand. And if you find yourself saying, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Time and time and time again, it doesn't make sense. So we've got to stop. Then we sound too scripted or robotic instead of conversational. Have you been there? Like the other day, I made like 40 different prospecting calls in an afternoon. 40 calls in an afternoon, right? And I had worked out my what I'm gonna say. I did the research on each person, so I knew I had some things in my toolbox or whatever you'll say. But by like the 38th call, hello, this is Jay. I had to pep it back up so I didn't sound scripted and robotic. How else do we speak at? We assume instead of asking. I don't know if there's any great assumers out there. I get into this all the time. I'm a problem solver and I just assume. What else when we speak at our clients? Being tone deaf to the client's current reality. We've got to understand they're people. People are hurting sometimes. They're coming in trying to get answers for what's happening. And so we've got to be cognizant of what's happening in their lives. And then prioritizing the transaction over the relationship. Anyone ever been there? Anyone? Yeah, we probably all could be honest with that. Like, let's just get this transaction over with. But what would an initial 30 seconds cost us? Would it hurt us? Okay, maybe if there's, lots of lines and need and all that kind of stuff. But what would it do for them? And then maybe another example is using pressure language like you should, you need to, or this is best for you. Ooh. Now, if you've built a long relationship and there's lots of trust, maybe you can use that language. But those are some of the speaking at misbehaviors. Now we've got to understand something about people. You're in the people business, and people are unsteady. People are emotional at times, especially when the markets go up and down, especially when stuff happens to their money, right? I mean, we've all experienced this. People can get agitated, angry, mad, frustrated. They jump to conclusions. But to dip into the world of psychology for a moment, those of us who had intro to psychology years ago or have watched too much Netflix and have learned a few things from some of the crime thriller shows, there's some emotional triggers that you as a financial professional, you should understand may happen in the lives of the people that you serve, the people that you regularly care for. And so if you can recognize those triggers, then you know how to respond. Then you know how to communicate. And this speaks to your emotional intelligence. If if you are someone who believes in growing your own influence, growing your own personal development, not waiting for someone else to do it, but you making a plan, I would highly recommend reading the book Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman. This is kind of the Bible. I hate to say that, and I mean to say that in a sacrilegious way, but this is like the foundational book for emotional intelligence. And it will teach you so much about how to deal with people because so often the emotional triggers start with fear, right? They see something on TikTok, they see something on the news. I'm sorry, our Gen Zers and millennials see something on TikTok. Our boomers see something on the news, right? Like that's the difference when it comes to the way they communicate. And they start to get afraid because all of that fear out there, it just starts to pour fire on this emotional trigger cycle. And so they start to get worried. What's wrong with my money? What's going to happen? How much have I lost? What am I going to do? And then the fear moves to panic. And they start to think, okay, I got to cash out. I got to get rid of, I got to, and then the panic mode takes over. Typically that moves to impulsivity, and then they make crazy decisions to where maybe if they couldn't get a hold of someone or they just do it on their own, then that leaves them sitting there with doubt. Like what's happening? What's going on? And then that can lead to some irrational things. And I wonder in the last couple of months if you've seen some of these, if you've seen some of these moments, because I know as I've traveled around, been in rooms with advisors, with licensed bankers, with program managers, with executives. Yes, we all have. With the markets going way down and then way up and then all over the place, there's some of these natural emotional triggers. But if you want to continually speak with your clients, speak with them in a way that they feel heard, you will build unlimited amounts of trust. Here's the reality: 46% of businesses lose a customer because of poor communication. That's it. Not because of product, not because of speed, not because of the up and downs, because of poor communication. Poor communication. And so it's on us uh, as the front line, as we talk with our customers, our clients, as we ask them great questions as we listen to them. We've got to be there. And I really love this quote: the way you communicate reveals everything about you. Words are the clothes your thoughts wear. So do the hard work to improve 1%. Be willing to be a little Tom Brady esque. I know Tom Brady might not be a huge fan there in Pittsburgh, but be willing to be that type of athlete that says, you know what, I'm going to continue to improve. Be that kind of leader that has the emotional intelligence to go, okay, I communicate all day long, but I bet there are maybe some misbehaviors that are happening. You'll have this information sent to you afterwards. I'll send it to Mark and James. But this is an ebook I put together with some proven strategies for you to elevate your client communication. I know it's a little shameless plug, but this is free. I give this out. This is me sitting down with hundreds of tellers, licensed bankers, financial advisors, wholesalers, program managers, program specialists, and just asking them questions and listening about their client communication. And I put it all in this document. We'll make sure we get it to you. But the best financial professionals don't just clinically prescribe financial products. They understand clients at a profoundly human level and meet them wherever they're at. So, are you ready to meet them wherever they're at? Are you ready? Have you done the hard work to be ready? Because we can't forget that effective communication impacts the bottom line. It impacts a lot of things. It impacts trust, productivity, morale, all of those things. But really, at the end of the day, if you want to succeed in your career, become a stronger, more effective, healthier communicator. And you absolutely will. Here's the power of communication. And I know some of this is just kind of maybe a refresher, but this is how important it is to understand the power of what's happening when you and I communicate. Sometimes we get into this mode where we just think, I'm just spewing out words. It's just words. The problem is there's three things, according to the research, that happens in every single conversation. There's, if you're doing the speaking, there's what I wanted to say. So you're actually thinking it in your head. And then there's actually what you said, right? Because sometimes what you think isn't what comes out. Anybody been there? Yeah, we could probably have some fun sharing about different client moments where we said something that was just totally off. And then it's what they understood. So instead of just trying to force something, instead of just trying to script something, instead of just trying to, get it out of your mouth, take the time to remember this is important. Every transaction is a hidden opportunity to build trust and uncover needs. Build trust. It's not luck, it's training. So let's go back to the 1%. I hope if you've got a notepad next to you, or maybe you got notes open up on your screen and you're listening, maybe start to take a list, write down a list. Is there something that's starting to bubble to the surface? Maybe in a performance evaluation, you've been told you need to slow down a little bit. Maybe a spouse or a kid or someone close to you have said, you interrupt sometimes. Maybe it's you haven't quite done your homework on all the products and you need to spend a little bit more time. Maybe you've done too much homework and some of those, communication skills. So look for okay, what are a couple of those ways? And I'm going to send you a resource sheet as well that will actually take you through an assessment. If you go through it, that will help you earmark, okay, these are the top misbehaviors in my client communication skills. Not just in how I communicate in general, because it's a whole different muscle. When I'm communicating with a coworker and then I turn around and I communicate with a client, it's a totally different muscle. So when we speak with, so do you speak with? Here's what we're aiming for. Here are some of the things. You greet them with warmth and presence. Warmth and presence. I want you to think right now on your greetings. When you greet someone, I know sometimes our own self-evaluation is different than what might hear from someone else, but but how do you think you come across? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it presence? Is it distance? Eye contact is everything. Eye contact. I even went so far years ago to get glasses with the reflection proof, so I didn't have any problems with my eyes. I do a lot of coaching of communicators, and one of the things I tell them right away is make sure people can see your eyes. And so if you're in a meeting with a client, make sure you're eye to eye. If you're behind a counter, make sure they can always see your eyes. I know we don't wear hats to work in 2025, but make sure our eyes just aren't covered. Smile. My grandmother Ball was a wonderful, beautiful woman. She said, two different types of people in this world, beautiful people and ugly people. I'm like, wow, grandma, that's tough. And she said, the only difference is beautiful people smile. Beautiful people smile. Use the smile. The smile changes everything. And then use your name if use their name if you know it. If they're repeat, you know them, make sure you use that name. Research shows us that when you say someone's name when they walk in the door, the trust that has been built in their brain just explodes. The trust just explodes. Okay, the next one, you eliminate distractions. Give them your full attention. You eliminate distractions, you give them the full attention. Some of us, we need to stop what we're doing on our screens. Some of us need to stop typing. We need to make sure our phone or our Apple Watch is, we're not always touching it, but we are looking at them. We're ready. We're ready to give them our full attention. Then another one, you listen more than you talk. You listen more than you talk. So giving them space for their whole story without jumping to conclusions. Now, yes, sometimes we have to move people in and out. Totally get all that. But we have to make sure that we're giving them that time. Another big one, and this goes back to the emotional intelligence. And so do that self work, read that primal leadership, or go watch everything you can on YouTube on emotional intelligence. That is absolutely free and you'll learn a ton. But with emotional intelligence, you can begin reading body language and respond with empathy. Our bodies say so much. Actually, in every single conversation, 55% of what is communicated is our body language. And so, are you slumping over? Some people aren't taken seriously as leaders or professionals because they're constantly slumping over. Sit up, shoulders up, head up. You are a leader, you are a professional, you are an expertise. And so, when people come in to speak with you, we need to project that amount of confidence. And so our body speaks a ton. People can notice the stress, they can notice the confusion, the frustration, they'll adjust accordingly. And so do absolutely everything you can. Another huge, huge communication tool that we need to speak with our clients is to ask open-ended, curiosity-driven questions. If we're in a room together, I would have you repeat after me. No more boring questions. No more boring questions. Take the time, do the homework to learn a set of questions so you always have them available. Because I'll tell you what, I'm not the smartest, most intellectual leader on the block, but I'm a reader and I'm someone who is constantly researching. And I want to always find those questions that disrupt someone's thinking. Because when you see someone, you say, "How's your day going?" "Oh, good." Okay, well, that's a really quick, unimpressive interaction. But what if you asked a question instead of "How was school today?" like you do to your kids, or "How's your day going?" What if you asked them a question that actually disrupted their thinking and went, "Wow, they want to know more about me. They care." And so find those kind of questions, what's been on your mind financially, find some of those questions that are able to disrupt. Then the last one, you speak clearly and avoid unnecessary industry jargon because we have to know, we have to have a great understanding and be able to explain it. But sometimes those complex terms don't translate into everyday language. Everyday language. So let's talk for a second. Five essential skills for trust building. Five essential skills. So my hope is today that some of this information jars you a little bit. That at the end of the day, you go, okay, wait a minute. Okay, I can use that. And so whether you're taking a couple notes or you're keeping a mental tab, kind of start thinking through, okay, how am I for these trust building communication skills? One, connect first. I greet by name. And so how are you at remembering names? Now, we have different people coming in. We have different people that we're seeing. One of the best tools you can ever experience as a financial professional is to remember names. The research is astounding about how it builds trust. You want to build trust with somebody, learn their name. Now, I hear all the objections. Jason, you don't understand. I'm not good with names. And part of me emphasizes, there's things I'm not good at. My senior in high school daughter is doing calculus. Yeah, I probably not going to be able to help her. I could probably help her get on a stage and deliver a presentation, but the calculus. But here's what I know about tricking our minds. If you tell yourself it's important enough, you'll be able to learn some names. If you stop saying, I'm no good with names, I'm no good with names, I can't remember names. Well, guess what? You're probably not because you keep saying it. So start saying a different story. I'm really good with names. I'm learning how to be good with names. I'm working hard at remembering names. And so greet them by name, learn those names. Two, listen actively, use affirming phrases, pause to reflect. Find the right ways to sound interested. Shameless plug. I have a podcast for leaders just like you called the Speak with People podcast. Twice a week, we air episodes with incredible leaders from around the world. And we want to help leaders like you improve your everyday leadership. And one of my friends about a year and a half ago, we have about 240 episodes. And one of my friends, he called me and he said, "Hey, you've got to stop moaning when you're interviewing your guests." And I had no idea what he was talking about until I listened back and I realized when the guest would say something profound, I would go, mm. well, well, as you're listening to that, like on 1.5 speed on a runner in the car, it just got ridiculous. So I had to find a new way to listen actively and affirm the phrases. So find that, whether it's nodding, whether it's, looking a little bit more intense, whether it's saying things like, wow, that's really deep, or that's a great perspective. 3, empathize honestly. Empathy is the name of the game in the business of people. If you don't have empathy, most people are not going to want to work with you. And so acknowledge the emotion, not just the facts. Learn. We'll talk more about empathy. 4, articulate clearly. Use short, powerful sentences, key phrases. You've got to learn how to embrace clarity when you speak. And then 5, resolve confidently. People are going to come in with problems. And so, do you know how to help them overcome their objections? Do you know how to listen to some of those things? Well, let me give you just a little insight that will help you with your communication for each generation. We have different generations. We work with different generations, and great communicators just don't speak to the same with everybody, right? They speak in a way that the different generations understand. And so you might hear people talk a lot about Gen Z. This is primarily kids born between 97 and 2012. Their preferred style is brief, they're authentic, they're text like. They actually love texts and DMs. Like, why are you calling me? Why are you talking to me face to face? Some of their key traits to understand with their communication is it's fast, it's emoji friendly, there's an informal tone, it's skeptical of fluff, so they just like get right to it. Get right to it. Know this about millennials, 81 to 96. Very transparent, casual professionalism. They're going to be more casual in their professionalism. Uh, Very conversational tone. They value purpose and empathy. Millennials value purpose very, very deeply. Then Gen X, 65 to 80, they're direct, efficient, no nonsense. I mean, this is the crowd, right? We like rode our bikes at night and jumped out of trees. And our key traits were straight to the point, time sensitive. We value expertise. And then we got our boomers, 46 to 64. They're more formal, voice based. They are respect. They love respect. They want to meet face to face. They appreciate manners. They love being called sir and ma'am. They're love full sentences, traditional etiquette. So, gonna give you some idea about how you approach each of these conversations. Because if you're a boomer and you speak to a Gen X the way that you want to be spoken to, there's going to be a disconnect in the connection. And so learn a little bit and meet a little bit of halfway. How to speak with each generation. Here's some specific examples. And again, you'll have Mark has this whole slide deck. You'll be able to have it. Uh, uh, hey, hey, Tom. We'll go back to Tom Brady just because he's kicked us off. I'll keep this quick. Here's the simple version. Sound good? Like these are just short examples, a friendly tone, kind of get right to it. My Gen Z son, if he texts me, he expects a response within seconds. I mean, that's just that generation. Millennials, let me walk you through this and why it matters. It's all about your goals. Again, conversational, values based, open to dialogue. Gen X, we're just going to jump right to it. Here's the bottom line. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to do next. Again, efficient, confident, prepared with facts. Boomers, good morning. We obviously use their name. Good morning, Mr. Brady. I've outlined a few clear options for you. Speak slowly, respectfully, structured clarity. If you're on a call a lot, if you're on the phone a lot, many of us are dealing a lot over the phone. We can still build a relationship over the phone. It can still be very, very powerful. Every call is an opportunity to build trust, not just deliver information. Phone communication matters more than ever. It's personal. We can hear their tone, the empathy, the care. It's immediate. You can read some of those emotional clues. It's differentiating. There's a sea of digital noise. They're watching everything. So a real voice stands out. So when you call them, it means something. It builds momentum. One great call can open the door to long-term loyalty and referrals. Let me give you a couple communication destroyers over the phone, right? These are the things that people are going to hang up pretty quickly about. And so we want to make sure that we're not destroying our trust over the phone. Rushing or multitasking. Oh my goodness, people can hear you multitasking. Also, eating while you're on the phone. Uh, People can hear it. It just breaks up the trust. It's not professional. Using vague language or jargon. Again, think through what you're going to say. Make sure there's not a tone mismatch. If they have high energy, uh, don't come at them with low energy. Try to match. Interrupting or missing the emotion. The more you interrupt on the call, the less trust you're going to be able to build. Speaking too quickly or unclear. Again, some of us, we have to work very hard to make sure we're speaking slowly. And sometimes we need to utilize this powerful P word called a pause. Because especially in sales, especially in connecting over the phone, you can use a pause powerfully to then ask them the powerful question that you need to ask about your product, or you need to ask about the next decision they're going to make. And then sounding robotic or bored. We we we've got to make sure that our voice sounds like it's this. Here's some great conversation starters just to kind of give you some, and maybe, I mean, again, refreshers for us, but tell me more about. Tell me more about. Tell me more opens up an entire open ended opportunity for them to share more. And really, the win is you getting some of them to share. How are things going with? Especially if they said something to you or this is a follow up call. If you remember what they said, powerful. Have you thought about? Have you thought about? I'm curious. And then ask the who, what, where, when, and hows. These are great conversation starters to be able to do that. I'll say this briefly as well, especially as professionals, as leaders who are dealing with people, people can be draining. And so if you want to be at your best, you want to continually get to that 1% improvement. You want to get to the place where you treat every call, every interaction with the same amount of gusto, the same amount of opportunity. Then learn a couple of grounding techniques. There's a reason why some of the best communicators in the world, some of the best leaders in the world use breathing exercises before they do difficult things. If you ever do sales presentations in front of a room, or if you ever get nervous speaking, one of the best things you can possibly do is to learn how to breathe deeply. Giant deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Before every difficult conversation, before every sales call, I do breathing exercises. Then I do some mental framing. I walk through how the conversation is going to go. I see a picture of it. And then I make sure my communication is concise, clear, and reassuring. 30% of acting, listening, and understanding can boost sales performance by 30%. 30% just by learning how to listen. Then we've got to add some empathy with it. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here. It's all going to be in the slide deck. We'd love to answer any questions as soon as we're done. But when you are balancing empathy with authority, especially during some uncertain times, you got to validate. I understand why you're feeling concerned. Then you got to reassure. Here's what the data and history show us. Then you got to redirect. Let's review the action steps. This empathy framework can happen on the phone. It can happen face to face. It can happen over a counter. It can happen over a desk. Validate, reassure, redirect. And make sure you're using stories. Make sure you're using an opportunity to be able to share a situation that has an action and a result. And the power of stories can do just incredible things. There's a couple communication pitfalls. Just make sure you're avoiding. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Don't worry, everything will be fine. That just dismisses them. I have no idea why this is happening. That undermines your confidence as a professional. And then just trust me. That lacks transparency. What we're looking for is a unified customer experience, right? The relationship between banker and advisor, clear communication, knowledge of the programs, great trust. This is when powerful communication happens, and it happens on a rhythm. So it's consistent and proactive and confident. Here's what I know: one powerful conversation can solidify client loyalty for years. So here's the challenge at the end of this. What are one or two communication misbehaviors we talked about in the beginning? What are some of those speaking at clients that, okay, it's time to just admit I've been doing those? What are some of those? Write them down right now. Just find a notepad, put them on a pad, put them in your phone, put them somewhere, but write them down. I'm using too much technical jargon. I'm interrupting. I'm not looking them in the eye. My body language is horrible. Then write down a couple of the good communication behaviors that you need to amplify. And so the things that you're doing well, amplify them throughout the week. Make sure that you use them in every single situation that you're in, because one powerful conversation can solidify client loyalty for years. If you want to go deeper with this, I have a whole information on my website, speakwithpeople.com/ speak with your client. We have an 18-part podcast series with leaders from literally around the globe, some of the best in prospecting, financial services, sales. I have a free ebook, the High Trust Sales Playbook, how to sell without sounding cheesy, salesy. All of that information is there. I actually have a book coming out in the fall called Speak with People, Not at Them, and I'm excited about that. And I have a free course on my website, speakwithpeople.com/resources, 7 ways to elevate your communication. Absolutely free. You go through it on your own. You come out the other end being able to improve your leadership. I'm always available for connection. This is my contact information. I have loved, absolutely loved partnering with Mark and James over this last year. I've loved partnering with James from Athene, and I hope there are pieces of this that were absolutely helpful and powerful for your own leadership. I would love to be able to be available to whenever you need any help or run any ideas. I'll hand it back to you guys. If there's questions, I would love to answer them. But thank you so much for this opportunity.